Today on Primer Talk, I'm delighted to have Jeenal Trivedi sit down with me and share her story. Jeenal's journey is about choosing curiosity over comfort. She began her career in digital marketing with stints at companies like Google and was on a steady corporate path until the ocean slowly changed things for her. Surfing didn't start as a sudden passion, but as a way to learn patience, presence, and how to begin again. While living in places like Thailand and Lombok, Jeanal fell in love with the waves, the people, and a slower way of life. Over time, surfing became a way she chose to live. That shift led her to co found Surf Club India with her partner Rajiv. Today, Surf Club India is not about perfect waves, it's about creating safe, beginner friendly spaces where people can try, fall, laugh, and learn together through meetups, workshops, trips, and surf retreats in India and abroad. At the heart of it all is the community Genal is building, open, inclusive, and rooted in shared experience. I am excited to explore her journey, her relationship with the ocean, and what it really takes to build a community around courage, movement, and showing up. Ms. Genal Trivedi, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being here on a fairly short notice. I remember, and I realized that it happened so fast. Last two couple of weeks back, we were attending your workshop. We saw you there. I saw you speaking. Like she's the one for the next podcast, and that's when we came to talk. And that was agreed to coming to the podcast. It was really quick. So thank you so much for that because I'm really excited for multiple reasons. One is that I always had fear of jumping into the water, which is something that I messaged you as well after the workshop,
Yeah.
right? I have learned swimming mostly through these party sessions that we have with friends, just
Yeah.
chilling, going to some resort and being, having that moment to myself where I just get out of a place, take off my clothes, and just jump into the water was something that I was so scared of. And that workshop really helped me get over that. I jumped twice, and that was the best thing that was there. So, thank you so much for facilitating that. And clearly, after that, we came to know that there's so much that we can unpack with you. You're running a super amazing community that is Surf Club India, right? It's something different. People need to know about it. And this is where, I would love to invite your insights and, primarily what is Surf Club India? What does it do? And, what plans do you guys have? What are you trying to do with the whole community, right? So all those things we can unpack over here. So thank you so much for coming.
Yeah.
And
My pleasure. I
yeah.
think it was manifestation because I've been wanting to do a podcast for a very long time. So I've been telling Rajiv also, when can I be on a podcast? Why is no one inviting me? So it just happened. And I said, yeah, why not? Yes, sounds exciting. I saw the episode that you did with Urmi and it was really nice. So I was excited to do this as well.
Amazing. So now that you're here and you're running a super fun, but that's the idea that I got from the Instagram page that when I was looking at it, fun community that is Surf Club India. Could you tell us a little more about it? How did it come into action? What it is all about? How do you guys host your retreats, your workshops, all those things?
So Surf Club India happened by accident.
Hmm.
We didn't intend on starting a community or doing something like this. Everything just happened naturally. So me and my husband Rajiv, I took a break last year. I used to work at Google, and I decided that I want to explore something outside of corporate and do something different. I actually quit to become a dive master because I'm a water baby. I love the ocean. I love water. I loved the idea of living by the island and diving every day for work. So it excited me. So I quit. We took a 1 month long vacation to just dive, and I wanted to get my dive master certification done. We dived a lot, but I also realized that maybe that's not something that I want to do right now because it's becoming a dive master is also a challenging thing. It's pretty physical, and a lot of effort goes into it. And I don't think I was ready to move out of Bangalore, as exciting as living on an island sounds. So we said, okay, that's okay. That's one of the things that I explored. We then went to Indonesia and we stayed for a month there surfing. And we had surfed before. I had surfed. We've been surfing for about 3 years, but never like that. And that was the first time I was introduced to the surfing culture and the community. And living in a small surf town, everybody knows everyone. You're going surfing, you're meeting the same people in the evening, chilling with them, hanging out, going to the parties. So it was fun. And when we came back, we were like, oh, this is something that we want to introduce to as many people as possible. So can we get our friends to go surfing somewhere? But we realized that it's very hard to convince people to try surfing, because it looks scary and people think it's an adventure sport, so it's not made for them. So a lot of attempts failed to get our friends to surf with us. So we said, okay, maybe this doesn't work. Maybe we go back and make friends with people who already know surfing or already want to surf. So it started as that, just an attempt to make friends who surf. And one thing led to the other. We bought a surf skate, which we also tried the first time in Indonesia. And we put it out on Instagram that, oh, we are hanging out and surf skating. If anyone wants to join and know what it is about, you can come. The first one, we didn't expect anyone to turn up. There were 12 people who
12
came.
people.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that started, and then we realized that there are so many people in Bangalore who like surfing, who've surfed before and want to go surfing. So uh, that started as a community, and it's a community-led surf club. We call it a community-led surf club. So everything that has happened so far is because of the community. So Surf Skate Meetup started because someone said, "Oh, let's meet. I want to try your board. I want to buy a new board." Then when we wanted to go surfing, we saw that people were like, I'm scared. I want to go surfing, but I'm scared of the ocean. I'm scared of deep. I think I will sink. So we said, okay, what can we do? We worked with Nisha Millet Swimming Academy. We put together the trading workshop, which is all about just getting over that fear of deep water. And that's what that workshop was about. Then people said, oh, I really want to get comfortable with water. We did a breathwork and free diving, basics of free diving workshop. We started group trips, and the first one we actually didn't plan to be a retreat or a camp or anything. We were just going. We said, whoever wants to come, we can go. And we realized that everything that was happening was managed by us: accommodation, surfing, surf school, all of that, what activities we'll do. So we said, if we're putting this much effort, might as well just host trips. That's how the retreats also started. So today we've done about 5 retreats. We have the next one coming up in Christmas. We're heading to Varkala. So everything is community led, everything is driven by one thing. So it was all a one big happy accident that happened, and it's the community today. Today we are 10,000 strong on Instagram. We have about 500 plus members on WhatsApp, and it's a good community. People hang out, people ask for questions like, where do I surf next, or what's in season right now. If they want to go international, we've surfed in a bunch of places. So everyone is connected that way.
Yeah, I've come to realize that all the great things either start through a need, by a need or an accident. So that's really great how the community has grown and how it started. You mentioned that you used to work at Google, right? And you were used to work in sales with Google.
Yeah.
So there was when I was looking at your even your career, right? There was quite a time that you have spent in a professional setting.
Yeah.
So in starting this community, there could have been some things that you would have learned in the professional settings, or so whatever skills you acquired there, how did they help you with the community, especially with the business aspect, right? Because when you're working in a corporate environment, you tend to know about the business, how it operates, what are the factors, and especially in a department which is as heavy as sales, which is knee deep down into the business. So how do those lessons or skills that you might have acquired at that particular time help you also build it into uh, or basically implement a business model for the community?
I think there is nothing in the world that prepares you for starting your own business. And when people say that I want to quit my job and start my own thing, I'm like, why? Why would you want to do that, right? It's very hard to run a business. It's very hard to give up the security of a job and jump into something that's uncertain. And business is just that. So even when I was working, I've worked for 8 years. I have 8+ years of experience across roles, across things that I've done. But a lot of things that are business are very different. And I come from a family that has zero businesses. Like, we don't have any family business, or no one in my family has actually run a business before.
क्या खून में business
So
नहीं है.
exactly, and that's funny because I'm Gujarati. So it's supposed to be in our genes. But yeah, so I never thought that I will quit and start a business. So when I quit, I actually quit to take a break. And that's what I kept telling people, that I'm on a break, I'm on a break. And then suddenly Surf Club India happened. So it was a great thing. But there are some things that I take back from the corporate career as well. I think Google, especially, what really made an impact on me was the focus and the attention on inclusivity. So, yes, you have a diverse workplace, but what do you do with that is the thing that matters the most. And even today at Surf Club India, whatever we do, I think I try my level best to make it inclusive. So, no matter what background you're coming from, no matter if you're scared of the ocean, if you want to surf, don't want to surf, have surfed before, it's open.
There's no barrier to
Yeah, there's
entry
no
as such.
barrier. Yes. And we believe that ocean is for everyone.
Hmm.
So, even if you're not staying anywhere close to the ocean, you need that community. And that's the idea. I mean, people who live at the coast already have that surfing community that exists and thrives. People who are in cities like Bangalore and Mumbai and Delhi that are away from the
Hmm.
coast are the ones that need community. So that's what it's about. And we do all girls retreat as well.
Yeah.
So that's at the center of everything, like just being inclusive. I think that's something that I really appreciate, what I carried from Google. And that was also the beginning of my journey of exploring feminism.
Hmm.
So I also feel like I'm very grateful for that, because the last 1.5 years has been a journey of trying on different things and figuring out what feminism means to me, and what I want to do as a feminist for other women and other communities.
So, what does feminism mean to you? Like, how have you come to define it over the time that you have, gotten introduced to it? Or
How long do we have?
no, we have plenty of time. That's
So
okay.
I think when I started, and I don't think anyone actually thinks about feminism. I think you can live your entire life without thinking, what does feminism mean to me? And most of women go through their entire lives without answering this question, right? But something that really worked with me was, um, it doesn't have to be outrage. Like, there are so many things to
Hmm.
be angry about in the world. The world is unfair for women. Corporate world is very different for women than men. Uh, Things are designed for men, but what do you do with that outrage is what is more important. So I feel like, for me, feminism is just showing up for other women and then doing things that make things better. So with the all girls retreat also, that was the idea, that there are so many spaces that exist. When I go to the gym, it's a lot of men. When I run on the road, there's a lot of men. Most of our lives, it's there. Women don't have spaces to just exist and be free and just be. So how do you create those spaces where they can feel themselves, and they can uh, experience this freedom that comes without judgment, without any filters that get attached? So that's what I think feminism means. And this is me paying forward and saying that, okay, if you're a woman, then if you're put in that setting of uh, all girls, it's a very different vibe, because then you realize that you can be girls.
Hmm. So, I mean, I want to get a little bit into this. So, a you found what you think about feminism, right? You discovered that, and through your initiative, how do you try to ensure? Like, we can get into a bit of technicalities also here. Like, how do you ensure? How are your retreats or your programs structured so that women can just be themselves? And then how do women show up? Like when they are in an all girls retreat kind of a setting where there's just girls, how do they show up? What are the behaviors that you see? What are the patterns that you see? And do they feel free? Or how do they just show up? Right. So we could get a little more into that as well.
So the surf retreats in general are designed around the surf life. So what we want to do is, I believe that if you try surfing for one day, maybe you don't love the sport. Maybe you'll not come back because it takes a day to get used to what surfing is, to understand, okay, what surfing is, what board is, what waves feel like when they hit you. So you have to do it for a number of days. 3, I think, is a great number to start with. So that's how the retreats are designed, that you have at least 3 to 5 days of surfing so you can experience the sport and not just have a brush with the sport and go back. So that's one part of it. For all girls retreat, what we made sure from my end was that I was the host, I was there throughout. So all of the activities that we had also were something that I curated and I put together, knowing that everything has a purpose. So the retreat itself was designed in a way that you have enough time to surf, you have enough time to experience a new city. If you want, explore. A lot of people came to Pondicherry. We hosted it in Pondicherry. So a lot of people came to Pondicherry to experience Auroville or just go out and see what cafes look like in Pondicherry, go by the beach. So we had enough time in between to do that. And we also had some activities that we enjoyed together. So our opening activity was a drum circle. So nothing brings people together like music. And there's just girls just bringing their fun selves out, and we don't know each other, we've never spoken to each other, but we're drumming together and we're dancing together, and that was a great start. So everyone just immediately, that bond happened. And then surfing, and then we had an ice bath, we had a journaling activity that we did. I host the art journaling part of it, which was also revolved around just being a woman and how does it feel like, and what that experience is. So that, I think, is what brings it. At the center of everything is safety and inclusion. Our instructors also, our head instructor was a female, so it's easier for you to feel confident. I had also curated a small goodie bag for women, and I know when it comes to water sports, there are so many barriers that women specifically face, like body image issues and tanning and menstruation. So I was like, okay, what can I do to make this a little bit better and safer and easier and calmer experience for you as a woman to do this? So we had rash guards that we had curated so that women don't feel shy going into the ocean, don't know what swimwear to wear, how modest should it be. So we did that. I had a hair care kit that I had from Earth Collective that we curated so that they don't have to worry about what will salt water do to my hair. And we had tied up with Sirona, and we had menstrual kits for each woman who was participating, because that's the biggest barrier. Every workshop, every retreat, I have at least a few women come up and say, I can't because I am on my period. So, just that's the experience. And I was not expecting how good it will be. After I came back, I don't want to do mixed gender retreats anymore. I just want to do all girls because the vibe is different. Everyone is so accommodating, and it's sisterhood, like, completely, because everyone wants to support.
Yeah.
And you don't see that outside because everyone has to compete for these few resources that exist for us. But in an all girls setting, all of that goes away. Everyone is free and very open and nice, kind.
So, do you see more women showing up, like since the beginning that you started? The point that you
100%.
started, now people are getting more associated with your community a little more. So, more women are showing up.
100% more women are showing up, and I do this every single time. So the last 2 workshops that we've done for trading also, we've had more women than men for the first time, like the first time that gender ratio was skewed. So we've done 7 trading workshops so far. Every month we have 40 participants that come, and every month it was the same. It was more guys than girls. And then last 2 times it's been great.
been
So
great,
yeah.
And what do they have to say about, like, you clearly put in a lot of thought into ensuring that A, they are safe, Second, whatever insecurities they might feel around water, whether it's hair or tanning, you ensure that that is taken care of through multiple partnerships that you have with different businesses, right? So clearly you are doing putting a lot of thought into this and also implementing a lot to ensure everything is all of their needs and wants are met, right? uh, what do they have to say about it when they come and when they are finally bidding adieu to each other? What's the emotion like there,
I
and what
think
do
there
they
were a
come and
lot
tell
of
you?
tears that happened on the retreat. Like everyone was, and we formed real friendships, right? That we take back. So I'm in touch with most of the girls that we were on the retreat. I message on Instagram very often. So the community feel, yes, it works, and friendships happen there. So people take back this aspect also, even on the workshops that we do. For a short duration we meet, but we've seen that for the all girls retreat also, a lot of girls who come for the trading workshop come for the retreat because they see me, and they see that, okay, there is some effort that goes behind this, and they feel like open to coming and trying out this experience because they feel safe and not judged.
Right. Okay. No, that's wonderful actually, because for a long time I was on the same thought. I used to think that I don't have anything against men. I am not like hardcore, like you said, right? I'm
Yeah,
not I'm not on the enraged end of the feminism spectrum. But I used to feel like they have so much brotherhood. Every day they're carrying their biking tools, entourage, right? The entire gang is come going with them. With when you see them in football clubs, all the adrenaline and all the testosterone is just all over. You can feel that vibe of brotherhood, and and I wanted to see something similar in women as well. And that's why when I saw your all girls retreat format that you do, or now you're saying that I don't want mixed gender at all. That's
yeah,
all I want to do. That's the first time that that thought that I only used to feel actually came or got validated at some stage. And now you said that exactly. You said the same, that there's so much sisterhood, there's so
yeah,
much emotion there, and women are finally feeling free,
yeah.
and feeling free around water. So that's that's commendable actually. I want to take a moment to appreciate that.
Thank you
And
so
I
much.
also it just fills my heart to just listen to that, because that's the same thing and the same thought that I used to have back then.
You
uh
should
yeah.
actually experience it. It was great.
Yes.
Like in just before surfing, there are girls braiding each other's hair, and
Taking care of each other, yeah.
exactly, yeah,
Yeah,
putting sunscreen on each other. That feeling is great. Like I can't describe it to
I
you.
know. I can
I
actually
also get
imagine.
emotional. So
That's amazing. But you know behind every community, behind every business, I feel like there's a skill. You mastered a skill, that is of surfing, and you can tell me more about what other formats you also know when it comes to water. uh, so tell me a little bit about that time when you yourself were learning, right? How was that time? Was it messy? What were the challenges that came? And because that's the first thing that comes to mind, right? Even when I attended your workshop, the one thing everyone spoke about why they wanted to do the workshop was because they had fear of water.
hmm.
And even when I talk to my my siblings or anyone, they're like, as soon as my feet can't touch the ground, dude, I just lose. I just get panicked. The same thing happens with me as well. And the same fear everyone else around us at that time you was holding. So we could talk a little bit about that fear, and also how you ensure people get over that fear, and also how did you get over that fear, right? There was certainly a time, there would have been a time when you were also learning. So we
I'm
can,
still learning.
yeah, you're definitely
I don't think
learning.
there is ever a time when you become, oh, I've learned surfing, I'm
Yeah.
done.
No, but to get past that point where you are now comfortable, like I can do it, I feel
Yeah.
comfortable with it, and I'm not like all panicky and going haywire. So tell us
So
about that
if I
time.
tell you something, you will not believe me, but I'm a water baby who's terrified of water. Terrified. So when I started, like, I learned swimming as a child. So I when I went for my certification, my open water certification for scuba, I said, yeah, I know swimming, what's there, and you have to do a test, a swim test. So either you do it with a snorkel or you swim and finish it. So I did it with a snorkel. So I was like, yeah, I know swimming. But there are some skills that you do in water. So you take off your mask and you have to re-wear your mask. And I freaked out. Like, I freaked out. I panicked. And we were doing it in the pool. So my instructor had to pull me out and sit me down and be like, okay, calm down. It's okay. Nothing has happened. So then I realized that knowing swimming is very different from being comfortable in water. So after that, I went back. I relearned swimming after being an adult. So it was different. But I thought that okay, that's what is going to change. And then I started doing a lot more dives, and I started doing liverboards, and just in general enjoyed diving. I got a lot more comfortable in water after that. So I thought, yeah, okay, maybe now is the time I'm comfortable with water. And then during these times in dives also, I would see people jump off the boat and just chill without tanks, without anything. And I was like, okay, maybe not completely comfortable. So I then went back and thought that maybe there is something more to be learned. So I relearned swimming again, continued swimming. I went back, and I remember this time we were on a liverboard in Indonesia, and everyone jumped from the upper deck of the boat, which is like 2 stories high. I said, there is no way in hell that I will do this. But I made that attempt that day, and I realized that it's not as scary as it looks. So every time I go through this, like there is a new thing that appears. Water has a way of humbling you, no matter how much you experience and how much you do this. After that, I did free diving. I learned free diving, but the first wave of big wave, 6 foot wave that took me down, I still panicked. I knew that I can hold my breath for 2 minutes. I can go down to 15 meters. All of that went down the window. Like nothing prepares you for these moments. So it's a continuous journey, and I think it continues till the time you enter the water, and every time. And I think it's better to underestimate yourself than overestimate, and be like, yeah, okay, I will learn a new skill. That's okay. So even today, I mean, I've gotten better. Yes. Earlier, I used to panic for maybe 30 seconds and take some time to get my bearings in water, but now it takes me 2 seconds maybe. But that initial fear is still there. It doesn't go away. I've lived with that fear for 30 years. It doesn't magically vanish.
Okay. So, building on the same conversation that we had upon you overcoming your fear of water and then getting to a comfortable state of mind, you're still learning. But yes, that fear, right, is something that I always get a little perplexed about, rather, like a little confused that why do we, as human beings, fear water? Like, as we have a long standing relationship with water,
Yeah.
where our civilizations essentially have grown near water bodies, right? As water flows, wherever water flows, humans go.
Yeah.
And nomads used to settle around, water sources. Civilizations were built along water sources, right? So, why still that fear? Even if we were to talk in terms of genetics or human body or human evolution, why do you think that fear still persists, even when we are at this point that now we are sufficiently evolved? So if you could, what are your
I
insights on the same?
I don't think that fear is something that has evolved. I think fear is something that has come in culturally and socially. It's not physiological. When you say that humans have a history of water and they evolved around water, water was always a life skill, like, or just a way of life. You go to water to fish because you want food, or you cross the river because you want to get from A to B. It was not recreational, it was not sports, which it is today. Today, we don't have to cross a river to go to school or anything. So I think it's not that we've not. That instinct is lost. I think we've not developed an instinct with water anymore. And when you talk about specifically about India, maybe why so many Indians fear water is very social, it's very cultural. It's because parents say, okay, don't go to water, you will drown or sink or all of these things. It's because of that. We don't have exposure enough to water to know how to deal with water. And even if we learn swimming, we've always learned swimming in confined spaces, in pools, in very controlled environments. So we still don't know how to deal with water when it comes to open water, when it comes to ocean. And a lot of places in India don't have lifeguards and safety and all of that, right? And it's very important. You have to learn what rip currents are. You if you want to enter water, you need to know what water is. There always has to be some respect for it. You always underestimate your abilities, like I say, when it comes to water, and you should be okay as long as you respect the water. The fear is because people haven't interacted with water as much or haven't given it as much time to develop that instinct. If you see babies, if you they have an instinct of floating or doing the doggy paddle. Nobody's taught them that. That's instinct. But if you don't expose a child to water for long, that instinct goes away because it's not had time to develop. That's why so many adults fear water, because they've not had that interaction in the beginning.
Now, that's a very intelligent point that and that makes sense as well, because even for dogs, like with my dog, for example, I see that I push him into the water. We pushed him into the water, into the pool once, and I don't think he had ever gotten into the pool, and he just began instinctively swimming so beautifully.
Yeah.
And just so that no one gets offended, no animals were harmed here. We just wanted to see. We were there, all the safety was there. But yeah,
He didn't have parents who told him you should be scared of water.
and
That's all.
he didn't have parents who told him, right? So
Yeah.
he instinctively and beautifully began swimming, and that was such a beautiful thing. And we recorded it. It was something we couldn't we couldn't stop adoring that moment. That was so beautiful. And now the point that you mentioned makes sense, because for a, he doesn't have any parents who are constantly scolding him or don't go near the water and all of that stuff. And b, they do not grow up in societies or cultures like us, where there are restrictions, there are confinements or rules to be followed. So do you think that maybe the societal influences, the cultural influences, they over the time take our ability, that instinctive ability that we might have? I'm talking with specifically with respect to water only. Over the time they do that, because we are learning how to behave in society, how what are our what are the rules of engagement and all those things. So even though if you take a baby and put him in water or her in water, they will be able to naturally swim. But over the time, if they do not practice, or their parents do not expose them enough, then they might lose their ability, because other pressures, other factors will start peering in.
Definitely. I think society and culture plays such an important role in your relationship with water. And I think India specifically has a culture of being afraid of water and uh, being scared of entering the ocean. And it's not just like, oh, what will happen? It's always on the extreme of you will drown, you will sink, the ocean will pull you inside, which, yes, you should be scared of to a degree, but you can always learn to be okay and learn to be not fearful of that. And I think also culturally, if you're talking about, when you talk about women, for example, that's a huge group of people that have so many more barriers, no access to pools, maybe. uh, Swimwear, modesty is a big important factor. So I remember even as children, when we learned swimming, we had like full leggings and full sleeves and a skirt. So it's not comfortable for many women to enter the water. So a lot of pools offer like only women batches and only women slots. uh, Menstruation, again, we talked about. So these barriers, these cultural barriers and social barriers will always exist And that's the reason why we're scared of water or we don't know. There's not enough education. I think if we pick up and we say that, okay, let's educate people, and swimming is one part of it. Other life skills are also, I mean, other things in swimming are also life skills. Swimming itself is not a life skill. How do you get comfortable in, say, open water, or how do you get comfortable in places where you can't put your feet down is the more important part of it. Because when you're uh, god forbid trying to save yourself, you're not going to do laps wherever you are. You will have to be calm
Yeah.
enough, and you'll have to be afloat for somebody to come and rescue you also. So those are the important skills that we have to give people. And even ocean, like when people go to beaches, we should also teach people how oceans behave. They're different. Like currents are a huge factor. And that's the reason why people get pulled in, because there are currents and we don't know about it. It looks very different from the outside. So, ocean awareness, water awareness is something that will remove that fear. But that fear exists because of society and culture.
Yeah, so you're saying that fear is validated. Fear should is there
Fear has to
because
be
of
there.
something.
I,
Because people drown,
yeah.
right? People drown, and that's why the fear is. But people do not always drown. There has to
Yeah.
be certain conditions. There has to be certain
It has
factors.
to be
Yeah,
respect, not
yeah,
fear. Fear is, I think,
yeah.
a very extreme way to come at it. If you respect the ocean and you respect how it behaves, that should be good enough. You don't have to be scared.
Mhm. Yeah. So this actually is a good segue into another conversation. Is we need to respect the ocean. We need to also understand the tides. We need to understand the currents.
Yeah.
What are the conditions under which people actually drown?
Uh,
Right, and how do people how instructors like you, or uh, programs like yours address that, right? Because that is a valid fear coming from somewhere. uh
so I don't think I would be the right person to answer how people
mhm,
drown or why people drown.
mhm,
For me, my understanding is that yes, currents can go wrong. There
mhm,
are rip currents that exist which are
mhm,
pulling you into the ocean. That
mhm,
happens, yes. And that's the reason why maybe people drown, or they panic a lot and drink a lot of water. That's the reason when
okay.
maybe they drown. How surfing works is, first of all, in India, wherever we surf, it's all beach breaks. So you're always surfing on the beach. And the surf schools that we work with, we ensure that they're safe, and they're all certified instructors. So we also look at timings of tide and waves and conditions before we
Mm,
go surfing as well. So you might see that, oh, session was at 7:30 but it's happening at 9, because the tide has changed and you have to be safe. If you're not a swimmer, you can't go in high tide because it's a lot of water. But similarly, you can't go in completely low tide. So all of that changes, and surf schools know how to deal with. They've been doing this for very long, and they know how to manage this as well. And even otherwise, I think wherever I say this to every participant who comes to the workshop, also, that always listen to locals. There is nobody
mm,
else who knows the ocean like somebody who's lived there their entire lives. So if someone says don't go in the ocean here, don't go.
mm,
Don't be the hero. But if they say that, okay, this is safe enough, you can go in, you can go deeper as well, that's fine. As
mm.
long as you know someone knows what they're doing.
Right. So it's all to your point, it's all about understanding and respecting. There are
Exactly.
definitely factors to be considered,
Yeah.
and having a good understanding of that helps you navigate and have fun as well, right? So
100%.
yeah,
If you're safe, you'll be having fun.
exactly. Right. Uh, I think when you were introducing yourself in the workshop, there's this one line that you said that India has one of the biggest coastlines.
Yeah.
Are enough Indians showing up to the beaches, or for these surf retreats that you talk about? Enough Indians showing up?
I don't know if it's enough, but a lot of them are actually now
Uh,
showing up, so it's good. I mean, when I went surfing for the first time in Mulki, we were, I think, 7 people in the water. Now, if you see some of the videos that I get from Mulki,
mm,
there are so
there's
many
so
people
many.
in the water. So yes, people are showing up, and showing up to the ocean. I think there are a couple of factors that are driving this also. One is that definitely we're traveling a lot more, so we're
Yes.
being exposed to uh, more beaches and more water sports. Like surfing didn't exist a few years back in India. Uh, Talk about kite surfing, wind surfing, wakeboarding, all of these new water sports that are coming in. A lot of people are getting introduced to that, and then they come back and they see people jumping from the boats. They come back and they're like, oh, when can I do this? How can I do this? So, a lot more people are taking that step. We see a lot more people surfing as well, and coming to retreats, and everywhere. I think surfing is picking up. So yes, enough people are coming in, even as a recreation, right? I mean, fitness has seen a boom. So swimming as a part of fitness has also seen a boom. You see so many people signing up for triathlons, ocean mans,
Yeah.
open water swims. And that's great because so many more people are then entering water and then learning about water and educating their friends and dragging them maybe to sign up for one of them together.
It's so important. It's so important for someone to start something, or something else catching up pace, and then everyone just sort of rides in the same wave. No pun
Yeah.
intended. So that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that, Jinal. Because that's really important that we, there has been a lot of talk about, or you might have seen as well now, there's a pull towards going towards nature, right?
Yeah.
Especially in the cities that we've built, all the pollution, the population, and all the problems that come with living in the cities. People are actually mulling over, someone used to joke, oh, I want to go back to farming.
Yeah.
They've lived a high pressured or high performing corporate life, and now after 10 years I'm just going to go back to farming. So people are feeling that push to come back to nature,
Yeah.
and do things that are much more calming, much more fun. Like you said, even you mentioned that right now, from now on, whatever I want to do is just,
Just
it should
fun.
involve fun,
Yeah.
right? So people are sort of, maybe they have reached that threshold, where there are so many physical issues, health issues that they're facing. It's just so much stress, and now they want to explore. So that could also be one of the reasons why people are exploring these things. And because income has increased, they
Yeah.
can travel more easily. Road connectivity has increased,
Definitely. Yes.
definitely. So these are all the factors. I mean, that's wonderful that you shared this, because i I feel like more and more people now need to go there, and especially more of women. So
Yeah.
that's definitely very powerful. What are some of the locations in India that are super, you know, super solid for surfing, right? Like I heard Mulki, I heard Varkala. What are some other locations in India that people can go to, no matter where they are in India? What's the
Yeah, I think India has a big coastline. There are so many parts of it that are still unexplored. Some of them have now seen traction, like Mulki has picked up. Mulki has become the surf capital, and a lot of beginners go there to learn surfing. But across West Coast and East Coast, there are many, many, many spots, and all of them surfing. You can actually, it's pretty beginner friendly. No matter where you go, you as a beginner, you always have place to learn. So on the West Coast, if I talk about right from Udupi, there's Mulki, there's Goa, there's the entire Kerala coast. So there's Kovalam in Kerala, there's Varkala. So lot of places that you can surf in. On the East Coast also, you have Kovalam in Chennai, you have Pondicherry, Mahabalipuram, and now we are also seeing surfing that's coming up in Odisha and Vizag, which were two locations that were unknown before. But I'm sure that there are so many more that exist that we don't know about. But these are some of the spots that we've been to and liked.
And there are a lot of people, hosting their own surfing camps there.
So India has a big culture right now of surf schools.
Surf
So
schools, exactly.
each of these locations will have multiple surf schools that exist, and they will have instructors that can train you and teach you how to surf. So, and then they will have courses which are 1 day, 3 day, 5 day, 7 day, as many days as you want to take that. So that's one part of it. That's how you can also surf. That a lot of times will not include accommodation or things like that. That's where your surf camps, surf retreats come in. So we do surf retreats, which is we do uh, everything is taken care of by us. You just have to come, book your flight, get to the location, and from then on, everything is set for you. So you don't have to worry about which, is this the right season to go to Varkala? Is, are the waves going to be beginner friendly or not? Is which surf school do I go with? How many days should I surf? What else is there in Varkala that I can explore? All of that is kind of, condensed down and put for you. So we have a 5 day surf retreat that we do in Varkala. We do 5 days of surfing, and we have other activities in the evening that are planned as well. We have also an entire um, PDF or like a guide to Varkala that we share with participants of things to do. So you surf in the morning, and that's how the retreat is. You surf in the morning, you come back, you have some breakfast with all the entire group, and we look at some surf photos, videos, and laugh about, okay, what the day was like, how many people fell, how many waves did you catch, the community aspect of it. And then there is a downtime, so you have enough time to go have lunch maybe at some other cliffside cafe if you want to explore Varkala, do some shopping if you want. Evening or afternoon, late afternoon, we have a non-surf activity. So we have surf skating that we include, which helps with balance in surfing. We do an ice bath at the third day so that your muscles that are really
Yeah.
sore get a new life for surfing the next day. We also do some different activities. So each itinerary looks a little bit different from the other. So the first one we had slacklining.
Hmm.
So that's also helps with balance and coordination a lot. This time we're including Kalaripayattu. So last time we had yoga, we have Kalaripayattu, which also helps, just prepare your body for surfing, a little bit of stretches and do that. And all of that put together will help you just experience that surf life.
Right. So you only host surf retreats, or are there any other formats that you do
Right now, we're only doing
with the
surf
surf
retreats.
retreats?
So we are doing once a month
Hmm.
retreats, depending on where the season is. So West Coast season and East Coast season differ in months. So whenever it's West Coast season, we pick one of the spots. Varkala is actually my favorite, so we keep going there a lot.
Hmm.
And then we move to the East Coast once the West Coast season is ended and monsoon starts here.
Right. That's that's very powerful. I'm hearing this for actually the first time, so it's something that I learn along with the audience as well. When you talk about the business model, right? How does it look like? For example, if someone to get started were to get started with Surf Club India, what are some of the membership types or packages that they can take? uh, all those things. And when's the next time that you're hosting this, so that people know in advance and they can plan around
So
this as well?
right now the community is completely free.
Hmm.
So you can be a community member. You can just join the WhatsApp group also, or you can join one of the activities that we do. We have multiple things that we do, so I'll bucket it out for you. One of them is the surf skate meetup, which is
Hmm.
completely free to attend. So if you own a surf skate, don't own a surf skate, you can just come, join, hang. It's usually a bunch of surfers just talking about surfing. So that's the surf skate meetup. We have workshops that we do, which are mostly in Bangalore right now, but we're planning to do these in Chennai, Mumbai, a lot of other locations as well. We're figuring out partners and things like that. We do the treading water workshop, which is just to get over the fear of deep water. So we do that workshop every month once. And we also did the breathwork and basics of free diving
Hmm.
workshop. We've only done one so far because that demand is a little bit less. People are still a little more scared of doing it inside water. I think
Hmm.
surface is still okay. Free
Right.
diving is when you're holding your breath and going down and doing a lot more breath work. So we do that as well. And those are paid workshops that you come in, you do the workshop. And then we have surf retreats, which is where you are introduced to surfing and you go to, say, a Pondicherry or a Varkala and you surf for 4 or 5 days. That's it. That's how the entire community works right now. We also just surf without retreats. Also, me and Rajiv love surfing. So whenever we head out, we shoot a message in the group saying, okay, we're heading to, say, Mahabalipuram or
Hmm.
whatever, if you somebody wants to join. And we go as a group together.
While building this community, that you've built a beautiful community and now it's gaining a lot of traction as well, right? What are some of your lessons that you had to learn the hard way, or even just lessons, right? When you look back at your journey now of 1.5 year, 1.5, 2 years approximately, uh, what do you think are the lessons that you would want to, you know, that you learned the hard way, and now you can, you are in a position to tell someone that, hey, this is, you've got to be, this is something that you've got to be wary
I
about,
think we're
cautious
too
about.
new to this. I'm
uh,
also getting these lessons every
uh,
day. But it's been, our community is only about 7 8 months old, and it started by accident, and everything that happens is around community. Everything is community led. So there are a lot of things that you learn from other people, and we've also learned. I think hosting better retreats, curating better itineraries, how to be present. I'm an introvert, so it is very hard to be in an
mm,
extroverted job as an
mm,
introvert. So for 5 days, I am just managing people, taking care of everything, all the needs at the surf retreat also, which is hard. But I think one of the important things to do is, at the end of the day, how does this help others who are doing this? So
mm,
everything works with that purpose. Like, okay, treading water, what purpose does it solve for people? Breath work and free diving, what purpose does it solve for people? Surf retreats, what purpose does it solve for people? If that is clear in your mind, I think everything else sort of falls into place. You will have a little bit of trial and error everywhere. Any business will, but it comes through together. And surfing is pretty niche in India still. So the community that already existed, the surf schools, the surfers, were very welcoming for us.
mm,
Touchwood, we've not had anyone say no to us so far. And everyone has been like, oh, you're doing a great job and introducing more people to surfing, so keep doing it. So we've got a lot of support from wherever we're doing this, which is why we're able to do this
mm.
also. So I think at the heart of it, if there's community, everything works.
Yeah, amazing. And is there something that, perhaps from a macro view, should be changed? Like, if there's something that should change in order to help attract more people, is there something like that? It could be infrastructure. For example, in running, when we go out for a run, we say in India, ka infrastructure is not supportive for runners. Is there
Hmm.
something that you feel the same for surfing as well, or swimming at large? So
Ah,
that we could attract more people into it, and that wouldn't act as a hurdle as such.
I think to promote surfing as a sport or as an
Hmm.
activity in India, I think lot more people have to try it. And
Hmm.
the biggest barriers we've seen are just this fear of water, don't know swimming.
Right.
So how do you actually get people who are not comfortable with water to try out a water activity, right? I think the first barrier there is get more people to swim, get more people to experience water the way that you want them to, and then introduce them to surfing. And it's going to be a slow process, but to change everything, I think more people try surfing, more people who have tried surfing become occasional surfers, more occasional surfers who become regular surfers who go into competitions. And India is getting there.
Hmm.
We hosted Asian Surfing Championship this year in Mahabalipuram. That gave us that global recognition also. So the more this happens, the more the surfing culture grows, the more people get uh, try out as well. If surfing is, I think surfing has not had its ZNMD moment where everybody is, like, oh, I want to be like Katrina, I want to try scuba diving. That's not happened. So if Bollywood, anyone's listening, maybe this is time you make your next hero a surfer, and it will boom. Then that's how you will
Yeah.
build the community up. That's how you will build more surfing.
So it's more about building culture,
Yeah,
and we could build a culture of surfing. I think community plays a huge role in that.
yeah, it does.
Yeah. So currently, we see that surfing is more about leisure and more on the fun side of things. I had so much fun just listening to the stories that you shared about the community that you've built. Uh, but to scale it up in India and to take it to a point where it's competitive, and surfing is competitive, there's competitions, and just like how it happens with triathlons, right? We
Yeah.
have running and swimming, cycling. Same, surfing is also added to the list of these competitions. What do you think would need to change from you know the bigger side of things in order to facilitate that, perhaps in terms of sponsorship or in terms of government involvement in that. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a very fair question. I think there's a lot in surfing. Surfing in India is niche. So it isn't mass right now. And anything that becomes mass is where, your money comes in, sponsorships come in. And that's when competitions also happen because there's enough number of people. There are competitions that happen today also
Hmm.
in surfing,
Hmm.
but that's limited to the community small pockets that we have today. There are budding surfers, we have groms, that the young surfers are called groms. So
Bombs.
we have grom patrols that happen where they're looking at new talent, new people who will surf, but still it's not, as a sport evolved, it's not recognized as a sport yet.
Hmm.
So to build this as a culture, as a surf culture, as a sport, I think it has to start from grassroots. So if enough number of people try it, then enough number of people have experienced it to take it to next levels, and competition is the next step. Today we don't have advanced surfers. um, we have a lot of surfers who compete nationally, who do great, and who compete in competitions across the world as well. But that's a limited pool. To build that pool out, we need more infrastructure of more coaching, more guidance, and that comes when the sport develops itself. So if we have more people who are trying surfing, more money comes in, and most of these surf schools are run by surfers themselves. So when beginners like you and me try surfing, we kind of help that grow a little bit more, and then it becomes uh, feasible for them also to grow to the next level. So that's a little bit of like that ecosystem that we have to build. So today the problem is that that doesn't exist. We have dime a dozen surf schools now. So many of them have opened up everywhere. But do we have enough people trying out surfing for the first time? Enough beginners who are in the sport? Maybe not. And that needs to also change a little bit. Like I said earlier, we've not had our ZNMD movement. So the moment it becomes like, it is cool, but the moment it becomes like cool to go surfing, and so many people go surfing, we have so much of coastline to actually do this. We have enough waves for everyone. So when more people try this, more this ecosystem builds. That's when sponsors also come in, because then it's a cool
Yeah.
sport that they want to back, and the athletes also get sponsorships because they're doing something cool that audience also loves. So that's how it will develop. It might take time, but it's changing definitely. Like, the landscape is changing. The kind of people that are trying out surfing for the first time are also changing. Our retreats, if you see, we get people from all over the country. We've had people from Delhi flying all the way to Kerala to try surfing, which is great, and more people should try this.
So it's only a matter of time.
Only a
Yeah,
matter of
only a
time,
matter of
yes.
time.
And like, if you talk about surfing as a culture, I think there is no better spot than Varkala who embodies this. Everything about Varkala is about surfing, and it exists as a community. All surf schools, all the boys know each other. They surf together. They go out, and everyone's helping each other out. That's the real sense of that culture. That is where it evolves even better and does more uh, for the industry as well.
I also noticed that you travel to a lot of other countries as well, like
Yeah,
Vietnam, Indonesia. You can talk about other countries as well if
yeah,
they're in the list. What's happening differently there? Right? They also have a coastline, like
yeah,
especially if we talk about Indonesia, Bali, all those regions.
yeah.
Uh, what's happening differently? What's the culture like there
So
with respect to surfing?
if you look
Hmm.
at proper surf towns, so say in Sri Lanka, if you go to Veligama, or you go to Arugambe, these are proper surf towns. Bali, Lombok, everything is about surfing. Right from the cafes who offer smoothie bowls to cafes that have the surf skate bowls as well. So everything promotes that. So if you enter that place, you feel like, okay, you know what, this is it. Like, this is a surfer's life. That I don't think is happening yet because not enough people are doing it yet. And India right now is not globally known for the waves.
Hmm. Why so?
Just, I mean, we've not been able to get that, but we did get our recognition when the Asian Surfing Championships happened here. We have great waves. Not a lot of foreigners come to experience the waves yet, but they do in Bali. You see a lot of foreigner crowd there.
Yeah.
Sri Lanka people go to surf. So slowly, I think once the infrastructure develops domestically is when we also develop and get more international tourists to try out surfing. We have great waves.
And we also need to do a good job promoting ourselves
Exactly.
because,
I think
yeah,
content, maybe we can work better
yes.
on the surfing content that exists out there.
That's really powerful. Yeah, it's important to know how other countries are doing because perhaps that can act as a lesson in
Yeah.
order to how we can. Because India has a great potential, no matter what. You talk about anything. You
Yeah.
talk about IT. You talk about sports, and we are actually at a point where there are so many people who have enough exposure in order to get themselves out there
Hmm.
and they can try multiple things, but collectively as a country, uh, we are still, I wouldn't say lagging behind, but we still have a long way to go, right?
Definitely. I think
And
anywhere there always exists
yes,
scope for
scope for
more.
improvement and
Yeah.
expansion. And also in India itself, we have a lot of issues to deal with. So maybe that doesn't come under
Yeah.
priority. But yes, I think individuals like you and I, we can, who have undertaken this through our personal endeavors, our initiatives, we can promote this. I never thought about, talking about surfing, like up until last week when I was in your workshop. And like I said, mentioned in the beginning as well, the way you were speaking about, there was so much passion in that. It's like this lady knows. She
Yeah.
knows what she's talking about, and we've got to bring her on. So thank you so much for coming.
My
That
pleasure.
this has been, and as soon as I told my colleagues that, hey, they were like, hey, who's going to be your next guest? I was like, it's going to be Jeenal Trivedi. I introduced you to them and told them about how I got introduced to you, what you do with Surf Club India. And they're like, dude, right now this is the best topic to pick because
Yeah.
surfing is slowly becoming popular in India.
Yeah, it is.
And right after that talk, right after this, I also saw yesterday, I saw a friend post about her surfing expedition to Mulki. She was
Yeah.
in Mulki and she had a surfboard, a picture of a surfboard.
Yeah.
So I was like, damn, the universe is affirming
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's validating, me inviting you to the podcast. So definitely very, very informative.
Thank you so much.
And you talked about the fear. We talked about the fear around water. We talked about how it is, what's the current situation in India like. How can we improve? How can we go on from there? And I wish you all the very best for your initiative. It's gonna
Thank you so
boom. You
much.
have a lot of positive energy around that, and stuff that you're doing for women is amazing. And I will also continue to call my friends for your retreats. We've already planned it
Awesome. We'll see you.
we're going to be in Varkala in March when you're going to
Yeah.
host your retreat there, right? So really excited to see you boom and really happy for you and wish you all the best.
Thank you so much. It was a great time chatting, and I think this is my
Yes.
first time on a podcast. It was fun. And I hope this reaches many people. Many people pick up
Yeah.
surfing and they just surf. So,
Yes.
and get introduced to the ocean. That's all.
Absolutely. Bang on.